Здравствуйте. I decided in the end to just totally redo it, so it took me longer. Sorry about that. My Sunday school teachers went on a missionary trip when I was about 7, and they went kind of on a tour all over the Communist East. I don't know if they hit every country. I can't remember if they actually hit Russia itself, but I know they went to Czechoslovakia, China, East Germany, and a few others. I think they went to Poland. I forgot where all else. They had false bottoms in their suitcases and contraband smuggling things in order to carry Bibles in the people's mother tongue to those places. The churches had to meet in secret because practice of their faith was restricted. I don't know if all the rules were the same in all the same places, but it hampered their ability to live what they believed, for sure. And when they came back, they showed us, among other things, pictures of maybe they shouldn't have shown us this when we were kids. There was nothing in it, but still, they showed us pictures of an execution chamber in China where people called enemies of the state were killed. I guess it wasn't like hidden or anything, maybe I suspect that was to intimidate, that it was something that you could, see relatively easily or get to, and everyone knew where it was or something like this could happen to you. I don't know, but it wasn't like this country has a death penalty, but you can't just, people can't just mosey into the execution chambers, randomly. But anyway, they had seen this. It says, tiny concrete block cell of a room with only one door and no windows. Rather nondescript, but I will never forget the execution chamber. There was nothing in it, and any blood or whatever was all cleaned up. I don't know how they went about doing it, but that was the place. They said, other things they said was sometimes they were running out of Bibles, and they didn't have enough for everybody, so at the end they would just start tearing pages out randomly and giving it to people. And the people would literally cry because they had a few pages of their own holy book, which meant so much to them, and they weren't not allowed, it wasn't allowed. So finally they had some of it, and that affected them a lot, because people here in the States usually have like 6 or 7 Bibles and never even read them. And those people were probably going to be reading it. That's part of the reason we don't live it very well most of the time, is the instructions. We don't look at them. Most of us are terrible about not reading it. We'll have a whole bunch. They probably lived it better than we did, with a lot less freedom to do so. I'm told that in some ways they lived it better than Americans. But if they had a page, they would read it, and they would do their best to do what it said. So, you probably had better Christians in those places than you have here. At least that's the impression that they give me. The only story I have directly from someone who was there about Russia itself was a pastor at another church I went to later. He said he did what my Sunday school teachers did, but I guess he did it on a fairly regular basis for a time in his life. And I think he was just going to Russia. He said he and his partner that went with him thought they had met an actual angel, because she had no uniform or anything, but she would walk right past KGB guards with no fear, telling them to get out of the way, and she had Bibles and stuff out in the open, and they didn't do anything to her. They just stepped aside. And so they thought she was an angel. She wouldn't tell them who she was, why she was helping them, or anything. She figured out what they were there for and just started doing that. So they thought she came from heaven. She was the wife of the head guy of the KGB. Whether it was all of Russia or just that part, I don't remember. But if she had told them that, they would not have trusted her. But she herself had converted, and because she was his wife, the KGB top guy wouldn't do anything to her, nor permit people under him to do anything to her. So she just had no fear of them at all. And so and since they were with her, they could do whatever. My Sunday school teachers had a similar story in China. They were about to be randomly searched by an officer, and a very tall man, not even Chinese, and with no uniform, said, "You don't need to search their bags, leave them alone." And the officer was like, "Who are you to tell me this?" And the guy never answered that. He only repeated adamantly, "You don't need to search their bags. You are not going to do that." And so this went on for a while. They were like, "How is this guy not afraid to do?" And they were a little bit scared by this whole altercation. They had stuff in their suitcases that would have implicated the pastors and the people that they stayed with. And remember, this is the same country that had that execution chamber. So it was serious, because it wasn't just them. I mean, they were Americans. They would have maybe been deported or something. But there were people that they had known and stayed there with that would have been in serious danger if that had happened. So they were like, "Oh God, oh God." And here this guy was like, "You're not going to do that." And there was no reason to think he had any right to say that, but he had no fear at all either. And ultimately, and he wouldn't answer the KGB guy who was like, "Who are you to tell me this?" He wouldn't. I don't know if they called him KGB in China, but the officer anyway. And eventually the guy did relent. It was like, "Okay, I'll let you off this time, or I'll let you off for a few minutes or whatever. This time I'll do what you're saying." He was like, "Okay, fine." And the man told them they were all right. It was okay. Get on the train. Get out of the country as soon as possible. They had some stuff left over, so they were thinking about making another stop, and they didn't because he told them that. And she said he was very tall. He was probably almost 7 feet tall. I don't know what that is in your measurements. And there's no missing him. Chinese people are usually pretty comparatively short. And they got on the train and they wanted to wave goodbye to him and to say thank you. She said there's no way he could have gotten inside that fast. I mean, you could see the whole place from inside the train. He was so tall. He was taller than everybody. He just stuck up over everyone. There's no way he could have gotten inside. We never saw him. It's like he literally, from all apparent, he literally disappeared. They think that he was an angel too. And in this case, with the information, I think they might be right. The last story, my grandfather was drafted into the army during the Korean War. He led a convoy of ammunition trucks all over Europe and ultimately bound for Korea, and he stood guard at the Iron Curtain in Berlin. And they hadn't built the wall yet. It was this big chain link fence. Hence the name Iron Curtain, I guess. The original, it was woven steel. An old man with a cane was walking near the fence on the communist side, and apparently he saw some people he knew on the other side, and they were waving to each other, and the people on Grandpa's side, they ran to the fence and pressed their faces to it, and the old man was making his way in that direction, clearly just wanting to say hi to people he knew. And the communist soldiers shot him down right there, apparently for approaching the fence. And the people on Grandpa's side screamed and cried and ran away. And Grandpa couldn't because he had to stay and make sure that those guys didn't breach the fence. So, he said that they laughed and joked and talked and ate their lunch, and he could barely swallow his, acting like nothing had happened. And when Grandpa went off shift, however long, hours later, and went back to the base, the old man still laid in the street like a piece of garbage, and they acted like he wasn't even there. And Grandpa, he was older, and he would tell the same stories over and over, especially upsetting ones, and he'd get himself worked up, and he would look at me, tears of rage in his eyes, face flushed red, and said, "If that's communism, you can keep it. I don't want it, never." And with venom that I don't think I could ever hope to convey. And I have to say I agree with his statement there. If that's communism, you could keep it. I wouldn't want it, never either. My understanding is he and his comrade would have liked to blow those communist guards away for what they've seen, but the same agreements that prevented those men from firing on the people on Grandpa's side or on Grandpa also prevented him from doing anything, retaliating at all, or responding really in any way for what he'd seen. I don't know if they were supposed to do that, but they did it in broad daylight in apparently a fairly public place, so they did it without any fear. Whatever was going on, those individuals were not afraid of repercussion from whoever was running that. But whether that was what they were supposed to do, I haven't read their orders. I don't have that information, but the information I have isn't very pretty. So if I was willing to tell stories that I heard second or third hand, I could probably go on forever, but I won't. I think we should stick to original teller of the story to keep accuracy, minimize propaganda and rumors if someone who was actually there told me this story. Otherwise, I'm just going to try to not pay attention because I know propaganda is a real thing. Things like that alone are usually why people here don't like communism, but lots of people can say they follow somebody and do terrible things in the name of it that person never said to do, so that doesn't necessarily prove that Marx and Lenin's ideas were bad. What the most compelling thing for me, more than anything, is what the American Indian movement leader Russell Means had to say about the Communist Manifesto. His culture was egalitarian and equal, anarchistic, leaderless as we define leaders, moneyless, and as far as economics and people having access to resources, it was rather equal before colonization. And his was the last tribe to come under American rule in at least the lower 48 states. So when he was a kid, there were still people living who remembered how it had been. He grew up with people around him, at least sometimes, who could tell you about, who could describe and explain it. And he read the Communist Manifesto, and he said that Marx's ideas were, in fact, a highly concentrated form of everything about U.S. capitalism that was incompatible with the ways of his people. So I think sometimes we come up with ideas when we live in certain societies and situations that sound revolutionary to us, but in fact all we have had to develop our ideas with is the same thing as what we already know, and all Mr. Marx had to work with to develop any ideas was a mess. So frankly, I think his ideas were probably a mess, garbage in, garbage out, especially since people who live the way Marx and Lenin said we should live don't agree with them. Tribal communities affected by communist states seem to get as much trouble from those governments as Christians do, whether they're egalitarian or not. So, apparently they don't agree. If you go around, from what I've been able to find out about it, if you go around an actual egalitarian society and say that you have ideas which, if everyone in the world followed it, everything would be just great, they might just kick you out of the village. Arrogance has no place there. It is totally taboo. They pretty much all say that pride often leads to violence, oppression, hurting your fellow man somehow. It leads to thinking you can be judge, jury, and executioner of other people if it is left unchecked. So egalitarian societies do not accept people talking like that. And if Lenin or Marx thought they had ideas, I think if they thought they had ideas everyone ought to follow, if you think about it, that is kind of arrogant. And so that's, for me, personally, why I don't lean that way, is more that than anything else. But it kind of fits with what Grandpa described. That's exactly what people seem to have done, you know. So, спасибо, до свидания.